It's time for another episode of What I Watched This Month, June edition. We got a bunch of titles to get through, so let's not waste any time. We kicked the month off with a classic, Kindergarten Cop, one of my absolute favorite Schwarzenegger comedies. This one holds up for so many decades thanks to the biting comedy playing on Arnold's big machismo personality. We get the big action opening that styles the tone as another Arnold vehicle before pulling the rug out from under you and forcing him to become a fish out of water as he must go undercover as a teacher to suss out which kid's parent is the woman on the run from her criminal husband. That's a mouthful. Only in the 90s, folks, could you get away with such a ridiculously hilarious, amazing premise. I rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse to prep for the new one, as I haven't watched this since I saw it in theaters, and dear God, does it hold up. Just a fantastic superhero movie, just when you thought the genre had run out of steam. It's a visual masterpiece loaded with lots of heart, humor, and chock full of all those Spider-Man Easter eggs one could hope for. It did make me a bit worried for the sequel, though, as I didn't think it could replicate the sheer mastercraft that was Into the Spider-Verse. We kept the rewatch theme going, prepping for The Flash as I turned to 1989's Batman, the superhero movie that helped pave the way for the absolute mountain of them that we get today. Thanks a fucking lot, Batman. But seriously, this is a solid movie. I think it captures the gothic and dark sensibility of the character in a way that none of the others have. Its world feels completely unique, its characters gloriously over the top, with some amazing practical sets that you just don't see in movies today, unfortunately. Our first new movie of the month, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is everything you could hope for from a sequel to a beloved movie. Bigger, bolder, visually insane. It builds on everything that came before it and adds complex layers to the characters, pushing them to their absolute limits. It's almost perfect, if it had an ending. It's no surprise now that this is the first in a two-part movie, and normally that would be alright with me if there was some kind of cathartic end to this film. But there's not. It just simply stops right as it's building to its finale. It's such a jarring end that it actively made me mad, and I knew it was coming, too. There are so many movies that have been split into two parts, but they at least have a definitive ending for their movie that leaves a cliffhanger for what's to come. Pirates, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, to name a few. It's crazy that this movie couldn't replicate those, that it just had to, just literally just stop. This is the one rare misstep in an otherwise perfect movie. We return to the Batverse with Batman Returns, my personal favorite of the 90s Batman movies. It so perfectly captures the dark gothic aesthetic Burton wanted, and it helps highlight the more absurdist nature of this Dark Knight iteration. Also, whoever pitched it to happen around Christmas time is a genius, because the snowy atmosphere just adds to all of its charm. This is a powerhouse of a movie, and it's a shame that the studios were a bunch of cowards and caved to the toy industry, because goddamn would I have loved to see what Burton would have done next with this franchise. I return yet again to 2014's Godzilla, marking 3 consecutive months now that I've watched this movie. It continues to grow on me the more I watch it too. Atmospheric, brooding, it's one of the few modern movies that I feel captures that Spielberg-esque style of blockbuster blocking. The fight scene in Hawaii alone being a notable highlight, as well as the finale in San Francisco. Each time I watch this, I find more and more to enjoy, and I don't know why 2014 TJ didn't like this at all, but older, wiser TJ now knows better, and this movie has gone from a 2-star to a 4-star movie, and only time will tell if, as I continue to watch it, will it hit that glorious 5-star rating. I finally caught this turd Under the Sea, The Little Mermaid live-action remake, and the less said about this, the better. Just bland, uninspired filmmaking. This is the epitome of today's bloated and dull blockbusters. A mishmash of corporate interference that feels like it was made under an AI than any actual filmmaker with a vision. Seriously, how do you do the song Under the Sea, sing about the crustacean band, but then don't show the crustacean band? It blows my mind. All of the fun, whimsical nature of the animated feature is gone in favor of this stifled, lifeless, computer-generated monstrosity that does nothing to add on the original in any way other than to dilute it. Transformers Rise of the Beasts is a movie I was expecting to be crap, but was actually pleasantly surprised by. I mean, it's no Academy Award caliber film, but for what I want from your turn your brain off blockbusters, this movie gave me. It was fun, with some solid action set pieces, human characters that didn't make me want to bash my brains in, a smart period choice of the 90s, and above all else, it was short. The Transformers series has always been known for its excess, so to see some restraint and give us a quick 2-hour blockbuster gets massive points from me, especially when everyone these days is trying to pad out their runtimes. Looking at you, some movies we're going to get to later. Also, the tease for G.I. Joe at the end was absolutely perfect. Whoever pitched that idea, give them a fucking $1 million because they deserve it. The Super Mario Bros. Movie came out on physical media, so of course I picked it up and gave it the rewatch, and it's still solid. It's a fun, enjoyable romp into the world of Super Mario that does exactly what it needed to do. Introduce us to this world with fun, vibrant characters and get in and out in under 100 minutes. They did just that and laughed all the way to $1.5 billion at the bank. Universal can pretty much effectively write off every other movie they made this year, and they'll still be in the green thanks to this movie. After my love of the 2014 has grown, I decided to go back and watch all the original Godzillas. They're on HBO Max, so I dove in, and this first one brings the fucking heat. It's dark and foreboding, building atmospheric tension to a boiling point before the creature strikes. And it's amazing how they found ways back then to make this movie look dark, violent, and above all else, chaotic, despite the limitations of the era. It goes to show how ingenuity amongst filmmakers is so much better than poorly rendered CGI. Speaking of poorly rendered CGI, I caught The Flash. An absolute chaotic movie of epic proportions, and none of it in the way that you want it to be. This movie is all over the place, trying to be so many things and more, and failing to be any of them effectively. Which is a shame, because there is a good movie here when it focuses solely on the Flash and his existential crisis of trying to bring his family back. It just gets bogged down with terrible CGI, too much fan service, and a story that undermines the central conflict of his journey. And it shows as this movie has absolutely tanked at the box office. Outside of Guardians and Spidey, superhero movies are taking an absolute beating this year. And I, for one, love to see it. Another movie taking a beating this year is Elemental, the latest from Pixar, and it's an absolute shame that it is because Pixar is one of the most well-rounded and reliable studios around. They don't deserve to be in this spot, but here they are thanks to lackluster performances brought on by Disney, training their audience to expect these movies on Disney+. And it's a shame because this is a solid movie, one that's worth seeing on the big screen. It's visually delightful and Pixar's first romantic comedy. Like, I love how varied they are in their genres and how they always tell a wonderful core story no matter the sandbox they want to play in. Sure, it's not top caliber Pixar, so if you're expecting Ratatouille or Toy Story 3, you're going to disappoint yourself, but it's solid middle of the road Pixar. And let's be honest, that's still better than 80% of the movies released today. I caught Godzilla Raids again, and dear God, was this one brutal to get through. None of the charm or atmospheric tension of the first one. I found myself absolutely struggling to stay invested for its slight 86-minute runtime. The fight choreography had none of the dynamic feel of the first, and you could tell that this movie felt rushed to capitalize on the success of the first film. Action is coming back strong this year, baby. Extraction 2 is a barn burner of a good time, and has one of the best action set pieces this year, rivaled by only John Wick. Seriously, the prison escape sequence plays like the best Call of Duty games, with checkpoints galore as you go from breaking someone out of prison, fighting your way out, nabbing a car, hopping a train, defending the train, all in one sequence. Hemsworth gives it his all and cements this series as one of the best in 2023, along with John Wick, giving us pulse-pounding action that feels like you're in the fight yourself. Vanilla Sky was released on 4K, so I picked it up hoping I'd like it better now than I did as a kid, and I can safely say, no, I did not. It's one of those mess with your head movies that's not nearly as sharp as it wants you to believe it is. And Christopher Nolan would take that genre to the heights it deserves a few years later, and this one would be sorely left in the dust, as it meanders from scene to scene with no solid hook or thread point to latch onto, to even begin to start questioning your reality while watching. Instead, you're just left bored waiting for the answer to finally be revealed. It's one of the rare misses in Tom Cruise's career. I couldn't bring myself back to the original Godzillas yet, so I turned to King of the Monsters, hoping that rating would change just as the 2014 did. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I still do not enjoy this movie. All the tension and use of atmosphere to tell the story is gone, and instead it feels like a button smasher video game played by a 5-year-old that didn't bother to read the manual before charging into the levels. It's dull, lifeless, with no interesting fight scenes to latch onto. But the only part of this movie I enjoyed was Ken Watanabe detonating the nuclear bomb in Godzilla's lair. It was the closest they came to replicating anything halfway interesting in this assault on your senses. Sometimes you just need a classic. National Treasure is one of those perfect turn your brain off and enjoy movies. Just a fun treasure hunting adventure series, and the closest I felt we've come to making a modern Indiana Jones film. Nicolas Cage is great in the lead role, leading us on a grand adventure as he steals the Declaration of Independence so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, and puts himself on a collision course with a treasure he's spent his whole life searching for. It's absolutely ridiculous and loads of fun. John Wick Chapter 4 came out on physical, so you know I had to grab it and give it a rewatch. An absolute masterpiece of action filmmaking. An assault on the senses in the best way possible, using every trick up its sleeve to astound and wow you and ask, Jesus Christ, how the fuck did they pull that off? It's a movie that absolutely earns its runtime, boasting 3 incredible action sequences that are all unique in their own way. From the Osaka throwdown, to the watery club fight, to the bird's eye view dragon fight, this movie never lets up for a second with its inventiveness, and still remains my favorite movie of 2023. Another movie like Godzilla that's risen up my ranks is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I did not like this when I first saw it back in '08. Not my Indiana Jones, I said, but I was naive. College TJ, who collectively agreed with an online consensus that wouldn't have been happy no matter how the movie turned out. I mean, just look at all of them today lamenting about Dial of Destiny when it hasn't even come out yet. Today I find myself ignoring those completely and discovering for the first time what makes these movies so great, even if they don't measure up to the originals. It also helps that I've gone to film school now and I understand story structure a little bit better. This movie, while still flawed, is an absolutely fun Indiana Jones film. The opening sequence in particular may be the best blocked scene for reintroducing the hero after so many years. It's exciting, it's fun, the new characters, with the exception of Mac, are all worthy cogs in the pantheon of Indiana Jones. But the only thing I can truly complain about in this movie today is the terrible CGI, Mutt swinging with the monkeys, and even that bothers me more because of the terribly rendered CGI than the actual act of him doing it, and actually seeing the alien ship take off. I always preferred just a hint of seeing the artifact's true power in the movies, but again, that's just a nitpick on my end. So, like Godzilla, this movie has shot way up for me, going from 2 stars to 4 with one watch. We finally got an R-rated comedy back in theaters with No Hard Feelings. Jennifer Lawrence's return to the silver screen in quite some time, and what a return it was. She gives 110% in this film, and it's what helps sell it above just being a middle-of-the-road average comedy. Her willingness and commitment to being the butt of the joke helps make this movie so much funnier than it would have been with a lesser caliber actress. She absolutely knocks it out of the park, scene after scene, with one glorious fight scene on the beach being an absolute top-tier moment in this movie. And finally, our last movie of the month, and my most anticipated, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. A movie I had been cautiously optimistic about the entire run-up to it debuting, and now I've finally seen it, and I have so many thoughts I don't even know where to begin. I think I'm going to make a separate video going to everything I want to say about this movie, so I'll be quick here. It's good. It's a very good Indiana Jones movie. It's fun. It's got the spirit of the originals while being its own thing. I like that it explores what Indy would be like as an old man and doesn't just make a standard Indy movie ignoring his age and the world around him. I like that it swings for the fence, even if it comes up short. My biggest complaint I can level at this movie, and it's one I can level at so many movies today, is its fucking length. It's way too goddamn long. 2 hours and 34 minutes is too long for an indie movie. 2 hours on the nose. That's all you get. That's all you need. That's all most movies need. But somewhere along the line, editors forgot how to edit, or studios aren't letting them edit it the way that they need to. They won't let them trim the fat anymore because they need to justify spending enormous amounts of money on these pictures. But either way, it's unnecessary and it actively hurts these movies. And it kept this movie from being an all-time classic Indiana Jones movie because it's just a slog during the middle portions of the movie. And that's everything I watched. Lots of rewatches this month, but sometimes you need to dial back and return to old movies, classics, and the ones that didn't turn you on the first time to see how our tastes have grown over the years. You might discover a movie you once dismissed is actually a movie you'd want to return to again and again. I know I did. But that'll do it for all of us here this time. Until next time, see you at the movies.